love this story. I remember it too. In 1986, someone broke into HBO's signal and put their own message on the screen. Not a hacker group, not a government, just one angry man with a satellite dish. Welcome back to Last Seen Online. This is a series where we explore strange stories from the hidden corners of technology, media, and the internet, including the forgotten moments that feel almost impossible now. Today's story takes us back to an era before streaming, before social media, and before the web as most people even know existed. Back when television signals moved through giant satellite dishes, premium channels were locked behind expensive technology, and one angry engineer decided to fight back in the most visible way possible. This is the story of a man who broke into HBO.
To understand why this hijacking mattered, you have to understand what television looked like in the mid-1980s. Cable television was expanding quickly. Premium networks like HBO were growing in influence, and home satellite dishes had become one of the only ways for people in rural areas to access the same programming as cable subscribers. These satellite dishes weren't the small metal circles most people think of today. They were huge backyard machines, often several feet wide, expensive to buy, expensive to maintain, and for many people, they represented freedom. With the right equipment, you could pull television signals directly out of the sky. But that freedom was starting to close. As broadcasters realized more households were receiving their programming directly, they began scrambling or encrypting their signals and charging additional fees for access. To viewers who had already invested thousands of dollars into their satellite systems, it felt like the rules had changed after they had already paid the price of entry. For many satellite dish owners, the anger wasn't just about money. It was about principle. They had bought specialized hardware, installed giant dishes on their property, and built access to a world of programming that had previously been difficult to reach. Then, as more networks began scrambling their feeds, they were told they had to pay again, sometimes in ways that felt confusing, restrictive, or unfair. HBO became one of the most visible symbols of that frustration because it was one of the first major networks to scramble its satellite signal full-time. To many executives, that made perfect business sense. To many satellite users, it felt like they were being treated as thieves for using equipment they had legally purchased. Tension built quietly across trade publications, enthusiast communities, and technical circles. Most people complained in letters, conversations, or small industry forums. One person decided to complain by taking over the signal itself. On April 27, 1986, HBO viewers watching The Falcon and the Snowman were interrupted by a message that suddenly appeared over the broadcast. It read, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight, $12.95. Month? No way. Showtime Movie Channel. Beware." For roughly 4.5 minutes, the signal remained hijacked. Across the country, people saw this bizarre interruption and had no idea what was happening. It was funny to some, unsettling to others, and deeply embarrassing to HBO. This wasn't a prank performed with a local TV station transmitter. This was a direct intrusion into the satellite transmission path of a national premium cable channel. The interruption was short, but the implications were enormous. If one person could do this, then the entire promise of satellite security suddenly looked fragile. The name Captain Midnight sounded theatrical, almost comic book-like, and for a brief period, it gave the incident a mythic quality. It sounded like the work of some mysterious media outlaw hiding behind a pirate identity. In reality, the person behind it was John R. McDougal, a satellite television engineer in Florida who worked in the broadcast equipment field. He was not trying to become a folk hero. He was angry, technically capable, and reckless enough to act on it. What made the story so compelling was that he wasn't attacking television for chaos or profit. He was sending a protest message. That gave the whole event a strange tone. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't sabotage in the traditional sense. It was an act of technical civil disobedience carried out on one of the most expensive communication systems in the world. McDougal was able to carry out the intrusion because he had access to professional uplink equipment, the kind used to send signals toward communication satellites. In that era, if you had the right dish, enough transmission power, and the right technical knowledge, you could potentially overpower another signal at the satellite level under the right conditions. That is exactly what happened. He pointed his equipment toward the same satellite carrying HBO's feed and transmitted a stronger signal long enough for his message to override the broadcast. Technically, it was elegant in a dangerous way. It exposed how vulnerable satellite distribution could be when the barrier to entry wasn't pure magic, but engineering. To most viewers, satellite television felt untouchable and massive. To someone who understood the system, it was a chain of physical and electronic weak points waiting for a determined person to test them. Once the signal was interrupted, the response was immediate. HBO, satellite operators, and federal authorities had every reason to find the person responsible quickly. This wasn't just an embarrassing prank. It was a direct violation of communications law and a warning shot to the entire satellite television industry. Investigators from the Federal Communications Commission moved fast, tracing transmission patterns, reviewing satellite access data, and narrowing the possible origin points of the interference. Unlike modern cybercrime, this kind of act still left a physical footprint in the world of transmission hardware. McDougal wasn't invisible. He was just counting on the complexity of the system to give him cover. It didn't. Within days, the investigation closed in, and the mystery of Captain Midnight was no longer much of a mystery at all. When McDougal was identified, the story shifted from media legend to legal consequence. He eventually pleaded guilty and was fined, and the incident helped push the satellite and broadcasting industries toward tighter security and stricter enforcement. What had seemed like a rebellious protest turned into a case study in system vulnerability. Broadcasters understood the humiliation. Regulators understood the danger. Engineers understood the lesson. If a single dissatisfied operator could seize part of a national signal path, then confidence in the whole distribution chain was at risk. In a strange way, Captain Midnight's message worked. It did not stop scrambling. It did not reform pricing, but it forced the industry to confront how exposed it really was. What makes this story endure is not just the hijack itself, but what it represents. Captain Midnight came from a specific technological moment, a time when television still felt centralized, premium media felt untouchable, and protests could travel through hardware instead of hashtags. Today, when people think about media disruption, they imagine hacks, leaks, or viral posts. In 1986, disruption looked like a man aiming a satellite dish at the sky and stealing a few minutes from one of America's biggest networks. It was analog rebellion colliding with corporate media at full power. And even now, decades later, the image still works because it captures something timeless. Every communication system, no matter how dominant it feels, is only secure until someone learns where its weakest point is.
Before you go, I want to hear what you think. Was Captain Midnight a criminal, a protester, or something in between? And if something like this happened today, would people see it as a sabotage or as a message? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like the video because it really helps the channel. And if you want more stories from the strange corners of the media, technology, and the internet, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Last Seen Online. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.